Join us today for an action packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball where we review the 2023 season for the Minnesota Twins.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one host for all your fantasy baseball knowledge. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Matthew Ane. You can find us on all social media platforms and podcasting apps. And if you can, please leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you may listen if you feel so inclined. And if you're watching on YouTube, please click the bell below. And that subscribes you to the channel and gives you alerts every time we drop a new episode. Also, please subscribe to us on our subtext for a more in-depth, personalized experience with the Locked On Fantasy Baseball crew, where we're going to give you all the fantasy rankings and all the extra stuff you can't get in this 30-minute podcast. So please subscribe now. All right, guys, we are going to get in it today. We're going to be talking Minnesota Twins. We're going to be talking about some of them young studs, what the outlook we feel is going to be for going into next year for these guys, and all this wonderful stuff. And just a PSA for the week. So we're only dropping about 4 episodes. We're also not doing it together this week. Little schedule mishap between the two of us. But yeah. So happy Halloween, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. And we're going to get in this. So Minnesota Twins, right? They finished 87 and 75. They ended up making the wild card and cruising their way through at first. They really did their thing. Going down the stretch, Royce Lewis was just an absolute animal. It was great to see him go in and do this. Unfortunately, after blowing through the Blue Jays, they ended up meeting their demise against the Astros, but almost everybody but the Rangers met their demise against the Astros. So it is what it is. Minnesota Twins really made a run for it. And you know what? They're going to be a dangerous team in a few years as long as they can get a couple more pieces, get rid of these disappointments that we have on this team. Carlos Correa. But, we'll go through it and we'll talk about some good names, some good performers, some questionable names, then the disappointments for both batting and pitching, and then some names I want to highlight at the end if we have time. So let's start off with probably the best name on this list, in my opinion, at least. We all know I'm absolutely obsessed with him for fantasy. That's Royce Lewis. Royce Lewis, we've been calling it all season long. When he comes back, stash him. You're going to need to stash him because he's going to have a special season. And boy, oh boy, did he. Royce Lewis absolutely crushed it after coming back for his ACL. In those 217 at-bats this year, 36 runs, 7 doubles, 15 bombs, 52 ribs, 6 stolen bases, 20 walks to 55 strikeouts, batted .309 with an OPS of .921. Now, the craziest part about this is Royce Lewis was, the second he came back, pretty much it was off to the races. But then he got hurt again, which, hey, he only managed to really just miss all of July and a little bit of August. But once he came back, he just started mashing. This second half outing from August to end of September, sheesh, and not even including the postseason. Let's put this together real quick. In August, he had 5 home runs. He had 14 ribs. He had a stolen base. He was batting .273. He also had 3 doubles and 10 runs. Then in September, he had 67 at-bats, 15 runs, 2 doubles, 6 bombs, 23 ribbies, 4 stolen bases, and he was batting .313 with an OPS of 1022. Royce Lewis came out and just started smacking the ball, picking up exactly where he left off, and was monstrous. Then we go into the playoffs where I'm even more impressed. 22 at bats, 6 runs, 4 home runs, 5 ribs, 4 walks, 8 strikeouts. Okay. Then the only number that really left me desiring is batting average, but he had an OPS of 1119. Like, okay, I feel it was more unluckiness than anything else because he was really smashing that ball. Royce Lewis is going to be a very special player. I'm going to be drafting him everywhere. Quite honestly, if I really pull up my rankings here, I think I'm probably going to be a little bit more bullish than anybody else. Quite honestly. Sorry about that. I had to pause this to yell at the wife. I'm sure you heard a little Taylor Swift in the background. Nothing against her, but there's no place on a fantasy baseball podcast. That's more of a Travis Kelce thing. But anyway, Royce Lewis, man, I think he's going to be absolutely incredible. I have him ranked as my number 4 third baseman going into next year. Man, and quite honestly, you guys are probably going to think I'm crazy who I have him over, but at the same time, I really feel like this kid is about to just, break through walls and just be really ridiculous for the next couple years. Royce Lewis is going to be monstrous overall. He's 24 years old. So, I mean, the sky's the limit for this kid. Definitely draft Royce Lewis next year. We're going to be talking about him a lot this year. Probably going to be one of my guys. But let's move on. Let's talk about Mr. Eduardo Julian. Got the call this year and showed up, in my opinion. There was a little bit of a rough patch throughout the season, which Whit rookie doesn't, but overall, he was fantastic. 338 at bats, 60 runs, 16 doubles, a triple, 16 bombs, 37 ribbies, 3 stolen bases, 64 walks to 128 strikeouts, batted .263 with an OPS of 839. I look at these numbers and I go, wow, Julian really looks like he's on what I like to call a trajectory of, year 2 might be really nice. I really feel this. You look at it, right? In that short sample size, little bit more than a half season, he had 16 home runs. And he was able to put together a nice batting average in his first appearance in the bigs. This tells me that his stuff in the minors is legitimate. So right before he got the call in the minors in AAA, he only had 133 at-bats, but here's his stats. 29 runs, 12 doubles, 5 bombs, 22 ribs, 3 stolen bases, 32 walks to 42 strikeouts. Love that. And batted .293 on the year. Julian seems to be a stud because in 2022 as well, he batted .300 and had 17 home runs. Honestly, this kid seems to be like the real deal for me as well. And I'm not hyping him up. I'm not going to bolster him and say, okay, this kid is the next second coming of Jose Altuve. Do not get me wrong. But I think Julian is definitely worth note. I have him as my number 11 second baseman right here, right now. And that can change and go up and down based off of how I'm feeling over the offseason and the more of a deeper dive I do. But I feel Edward Julian is a special talent and somebody else that really needs to be highlighted. I think him and Lewis are going to be the face of this organization in the coming years, quite honestly. And it's going to be something special between the two of them. What we could possibly expect from Julian next year is, I think, more stolen bases because in the minors he had 19. I think the home run numbers, we might see anywhere from 21 to 25, which that'd be a really nice combo of just the home runs and the stolen bases. And I think the batting average is legitimate. I think that comes up into the 280s to 285 range. And I think that's going to be really nice. And, if this team takes a step forward as a whole, brings in some more talent in the batting aspect, or if, I don't know, guys like Byron Buxton can stay healthy, we're going to see a lot of opportunity for both Lewis and Julian to really take a step forward in both runs and ribbies. And before we move on and we talk about Byron Buxton, since I just brought him up, the disappointment that we call Carlos Correa, and a whole bunch of pitchers that, I think had a fantastic year, I have a sponsor we need to talk about. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get a $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in the action. The app is super easy to use, and there's wide ranges of betting options, including spreads, player props, over and under, and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL, and quite honestly, it's my favorite, hands down, favorite betting platform. I don't use the other names that we cannot mention, but I've been using FanDuel since it came out, since, DFS and all the wonderful stuff. And then when they added the sports book, it's just been another, tier of fun and betting action. So definitely check out FanDuel today. All right. Dear everydayers and new listeners, we have an incredible opportunity for you to help support the show and enjoy some fantastic perks along the way. Introducing the Diamond Club on Subtext. By becoming a member, you not only contribute to the show's success, but also gain access to exclusive benefits. Get your hands on our actual rankings this season, our bust lists, our dynasty rankings, our rookie rankings. Okay. You also get our value picks, our extra value picks, all the extra bonuses that we're not going to have time to talk about in this 30-minute podcast. Plus, you get to ask us all those burning fantasy questions that you have. And if you want us to rank your team after your draft, you're going to want to get on the Subtext now. Stay ahead of the game and join the Diamond Club on Subtext. All right. Great, guys. Thank you. We're going to talk about some Mr. Byron Buxton, Mr. Flanges, Mr. I can't stay healthy for the life of me. You could tell I'm clearly frustrated with Buxton, but hey, it is what it is. For guys, if you're new to this, you're not an everydayer yet. You will be. You're going to understand. You're going to hear me use this term a lot. Flanges. Flanges is what I call an injury-prone player. It's really funny. It kind of stuck from when we were the MDs and kind of brought it over here to Locked On. And, it's been fun. And Flanges is pretty much just my way of saying they're just injury-prone and they can't stay healthy. Just think of Alberto Montesi every time I say it. You also hear me, poo-poo all over him. But anyway, let's talk about Byron Buxton here. 304 at-bats this year. 49 runs, 17 doubles, a triple, 17 bombs, 42 ribs, 35 walks to 109 strikeouts. I mean, I expect nothing less at this point. And batted .207. Now, here's the thing about Buxton. He actually had a good season if you look at just his numbers and the at-bats he had. The problem is the dude just can't stay on the field for you. Now, I get really frustrated with that because, you draft a player and you want them to play a full season for you. And when they don't do that, you got to hope and pray that, they're healthy in the right months, which is honestly the second half, in my opinion. But unfortunately, he didn't play after August. And he really wasn't there when it counted. So all that production came in the first half. So he got you to the show. Essentially, he thrusted you almost until August. And then, boom, what happened, dude? You're gone. What am I supposed to do? And it's not like he was a picture of health throughout those months. I mean, it's really unfortunate with him. If this dude can just put it together and be healthy this year, it'll be healthy 1 year. We're going to see some magic coming from this dude. And quite honestly, going to the next year, I think his injury-prone history, his flangy history, is going to, come into effect in his rankings this year. Let's see where I have Byron Buxton. I have Byron Buxton, I think, buried this year, actually. Oh, man. Well, I actually can't find him, but I will come back at another time and talk about it. But I feel Byron Buxton, I think last year I had him in my top 20. I think clearly I have him outside of my top 40. And I think outside of the top 40, you're number 4, anything past number 4 outfield, and then I'm okay with having him. But it depends on the price, depends on the ADP, depends on a few things. And as we get into the season and we see what ADP looks like, we'll be able to say whether Byron Buxton is going to be a value or an absolute bust because he just can't stay on the field. So with that being said, let's move on. Let's talk about my least favorite player in the whole MLB, and that's Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa, who, had some drama going into the season this year with, he's not going to be healthy enough. He's not going to be able to pass his physical. trying to go to a new team, and he ended up back at the Twins because they were stuck with him, and they paid him a bag full of money. This dude really hasn't put together a great season, in my opinion, for fantasy contribution. People will feel differently from my point of view since 2021. So it's been 2 full seasons now. And this year, he did manage to play 514 at bats, but this year it was super disappointing. 60 runs, 29 doubles, love that stat, 2 triples, 18 bombs, 65 ribs, 59 walks to 139 strikeouts, batted .230. Okay. You look at these numbers and you go, it's not so bad. But we want the 2021 Carlos Correa, where he had 104 runs, where he had 34 doubles. He had 26 home runs. He had 92 ribs. You know, even the walk to strikeouts was 75 walks to 116 strikeouts, and he was batting 291 that year. I mean, 279 that year. Like, that's what you want from Correa, but he can't do that. I don't think he's got it in him. I think he's going to be more of a 250 hitter moving forward. And honestly, I don't know, but if he's going to be a picture of health, he managed to play what? 135 games. Not bad. Not bad at all. But I don't foresee it happening. I think, honestly, we're seeing a downward turn. I think that Royce Lewis is going to step up and just be the face that Carlos Correa couldn't be. And, you know, I don't think he belongs on any fantasy rosters unless he is like your second or third bench player, in my opinion. And he's in the do not touch, do not go near category for me. He will not be on a single team, you know, until he could prove he can get back there. And I'd rather him have a great season on another team than completely bomb on my bench. And I picked him over somebody else that has, you know, upside that is more predictive than what Carlos Correa can maybe do. And statistically, it's not on his side to go and bounce back. So with that being said, we're going to move on here. We're going to talk about Mr. Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray, love this season from him. You know, thank you, my guy, for doing your thing. I honestly, I'm going to say it right now. I did not expect this kind of season from Sonny Gray at age 33. But you guys always know how I feel about older pitchers. They become more mature. They figure things out. They do things. It's more of a chess match. And Gray had a good Gray had a good season in 2022 as well. But this year took it to new heights. He had 184 innings. He had 183 strikeouts, right under K per nine, a 2.79 ERA with a 1.14 WHIP. And my favorite pitching stat, FIP, fielding independent pitching. So if you have an average defense behind you, this is what your ERA would be. And that was a 2.83. And he pitched a 2.79. So he was literally pitching on pace of what he was actually doing. So this is legitimate this year. What he did was good. Do I think this season is repeatable with a sub 3? Absolutely not. I think he's in the low threes. I think a 308 to 320 is completely realistic. I think the K per nine is completely realistic. I think if this team takes a step forward and, you know, starts putting more wins on there, I think he can get many more wins and more than 8, you know, and do his thing. I think that personally, Sonny Gray is primed to have a good season next year with the Twins just going in it. I'm loving his outlook for next year. I think that Sonny Gray is going to be great. I did not do my starting pitching rankings yet, but I think he's going to be a pitcher 3 for me, just based off of the fact that there's just other names that I kind of want to have. I have a little bit more upside in the strikeout aspect or the wins category. So even those wins aren't completely predictable, they're probably the most unpredictable stat in baseball, in my opinion. So with that being said, I think Sonny Gray is going to have a great season next year. I can't wait to see where I'm actually drafting him and where he ends up in my rankings this year. But before we do, and we talk about, you know, another guy that came out of left field, always been good, but finally put a full season together of being great. Guy that was a waiver wire darling, and a guy that we called the breakout. But before that, we had a sponsor. All right, and we're back. So let's talk about Mr. Pablo Lopez. Pablo really just did his thing this year. I'm really impressed. He was very elite, very commanding, and he ended up, you know, starting 32 games, I love it. I love it. When this dude is healthy, he is incredible. And the last 2 seasons, he's been doing it. And I love it even more they did it the first year on a new team because you know my rule. If you're new to this show, you don't. New team, slower start. It's not as good as year 2 on that team. So he did this in his first year with them. I think next year is going to be even better. This year he had 194 innings pitched, most he's done in a single season, and really, really lived up to the challenge because to that 194 innings pitch, he had 234 strikeouts. Like, let's go. Then on top of that, a 3.66 ERA. And he had a 1.15 whip. Like, great season. And this is my favorite part. The FIP, which we just talked about, was a 3.33, which means he was pitching better than what he was normal than what he posted on the season. And on top of that, this is year 1 with Minnesota. Can you imagine what year 2 is going to look like, guys? Like year 2 in this system, home, things are good. You're settled. Your family's good. Things are moving and grooving for you. Pablo Lopez can seriously take a step forward. And if he could play the whole season again, oh my God, it could be something special. He's going to be a strong pitcher 2 candidate for me this year. I haven't ranked it yet, but I'm telling you, he's going to end up being in my top 20. Where in that, I don't know. But Pablo Lopez, boy, oh boy, I'm going to be excited to draft him. Whew. All right. Let's talk about Mr. Kenta Maeda. Man, he was really good this year in terms of, coming back from the injury and also getting hurt again, but ultimately did his thing. Now, if you look at his ERA on the year, you're probably like, what are you talking about, Matt? Like, I don't see it. But honestly, if you broke it down by the months, and we'll get into that, when he returned from his injury, it was fantastic. Okay. On the year, he had 104 innings pitched. He had 117 strikeouts. He had a 4.23 ERA with a 1.169 whip and a 4.02 whip. Now, let's bring up his pitching splits on this year for first half and second half, right? Give me a second. Bear with me. I feel like diving in, right? So, first half versus second half, right? First half, he had, 33 innings pitched. He had a 5.18 ERA. Really looked grim at first, but he had 5 strikeouts. But the second half, though, 71 innings pitched, 82 strikeouts, 3.79 ERA. Much better. Obviously, a lot better. And like I said, his overall season ERA does not depict what he actually did. And that second half was great, the 3.79 ERA with a 1.12 whip. So I think it's absolutely legitimate with this second half. Now, thing is, Kenta Maeda is no young pup, but again, I like older pitchers, but he's getting on that end where like anything can kind of fall off at any moment at age 35. So like Kenta Maeda isn't somebody I'm going to draft as like my pitcher 4 or 5, but he's somebody I'm going to be targeting to if I missed out on a certain tier and, I didn't get a good pitcher 5, then I'm okay with it if I have to make him my pitcher 5. But my pitcher 6, Kenta Maeda, going to be fantastic in those deeper leagues. He might have to be your 4 or 5, but we'll see. 12-man, good pitcher 5-6. We'll see. Kenta Maeda is somebody you definitely want to keep an eye on, highlight, and we'll see what happens and see what ADP does because, if people like me remember what that second half was like, he could quite honestly rise up those draft boards and then he may be untouchable for me. So we'll get into that as we get closer into the season. We see ADP. Now let's talk about a dude we called Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan, man, it all seemed like happy joy. We called it. We nailed it for that first half. First half was so special. It was so special. And I feel like these numbers don't even do it justice on the year, but who knows what happened here. But I'm going to read off his stats for the year, and then I'll split it up for, months and first half, second half type deal. So 161 innings pitched, 197 strikeouts, a 4.51 ERA with a 1.169 whip with a 4.13 FIP. FIP is kind of makes me feel a little bit better about it, but still it's above 4. I'm not really happy about it. But let's get into, exactly the splits of, first half, second half type deal. So what I'm looking at here is the first half here. Can I get my stats? Thank you. He posted about a 3.83 ERA in that first half through 82 innings pitched, and he had 111 strikeouts through that time. So he was really like blowing through it. And then in the second half, oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Oh, God, I'm reading home and away splits. I apologize, guys. Apologize. Okay. So first half number, 107 innings pitched to 124 strikeouts. And then he had a 3.7 ERA and a whip of 1. Now, in the second half, here's where it got ugly. 54 innings pitched, 6.09 ERA on that second half with only a 73 strikeouts. So it was still above the K per 9 predominantly. But at the same time, like with the ERA going up, the whip was a 1.482. Like he really fell off a cliff. Like I don't know what the deal is there, but like quite honestly, I look at it and I go, oh boy, what happened now? Do I think like this is him? Like, hey, maybe he's not a second half pitcher and he's more of a Joe Musgrove on that aspect. I don't know. I'm looking at, his career high on innings. It was definitely this year. Last year he had 147, and his ERA was not the greatest either. It was better last year, 3.55 ERA, but who knows with that. I feel like, hey, maybe we were getting closer to the top, to the high, and he was just getting a little bit more fatigued, and he's got to figure it out. But hey, it is what it is. I think Joe Ryan is going to be fantastic. If anything, we're going to probably get him this last year on a discount because people are going to remember that second half versus that first half. So I'm definitely drafting Joe Ryan, bounce back candidate, and is somebody that I think is going to pull through and really fix the problem. So don't forget about Joe Ryan come next year. All right. Let's talk about Louis Varland, somebody I do want to talk about. I like Varland a lot. You may call me crazy, whatever, because you look at his stats on the year and it's really not that impressive. But he had really nice moments this year. 68 innings pitched, 71 strikeouts, a 4.63 ERA with a 1.22 whip and a 5.02 FIP. Now, I'm not really happy about the FIP numbers, but let's talk about him real quick. Before he got the call, he had a 3.97 ERA. He had 81 innings pitched to 88 strikeouts and a 1.347 whip. The year before that, in 2022, when he did get the call up, he had a 3.81 ERA and had about 26 innings pitched and had 21 strikeouts and the whip of 1.231. But in the minors that year in 2022, here's where I really like him. 126 innings pitched, 146 strikeouts, a 3.06 ERA, and a 1.259 whip. Now, here's the thing. His whip is high just because he just likes to strike everybody out and he leaves too many balls hanging pretty much is how I look at it. But Varland, I feel, has a next level type thing that I think is going to take a step forward for next year. So he's going to be somebody that we're going to be just writing on the sleepers list or, maybe a breakout list, a year 2 guy that I feel could possibly provide some fantasy value and be some late round, value that most people aren't going to see is going to be coming from left field. I like Varland a lot for that, but let's see what the rest of the industry does because maybe we all drive him up as a whole, and then we're sitting here and we're paying the price that we probably should be. He's no longer a value. We shall see with Varland. But I'm going to try and sneak in this last guy here, and it's Alex Kirilloff. Kirilloff, what he did this year is interesting. He's 25 years old, just starting to hit the prime age year, 3rd year in the big, really hasn't lived up to what he should be, but I feel like we might have started to see the beginning of this, right? Plus, he also hasn't been the picture of health. But anyway, 281 at bats this year, 35 runs, 14 doubles, a triple, 11 bombs, 41 ribs, 28 walks to 80 strikeouts, batted 270 on the year, and 793 OPS. I don't know. I have a soft spot for this kid. He's kind of like a guilty pleasure for me when it comes to, fantasy and whatnot. But I look at what he did in 2022 in the minors, in between getting the call. And I'm like, it's really enticing for me. You look at it, he had 131 at bats. He had 33 runs. He had 7 doubles, 10 bombs in that short period of time, 32 ribs, 22 walks to 26 strikeouts, and he was batting 359. Like, I think this kid has some legitimate talent. Obviously, he was, definitely was giving off those vibes at one point, but has not really lived up to the hype. But maybe it takes a few years for the maturity to come out and for him to really adjust because, he got called up at age 23. Maybe he just wasn't really ready for the show yet. But I feel like this year was kind of a nice indicator. Hey, he still might have something left in the tank, and maybe there's still a whole nother level we haven't hit now that he's 25 years old. So let's see what happens next year. He's not going to be, draft price probably isn't going to be outrageous or anything of the sort. But ultimately, I feel he could be somebody that we should be, essentially keeping a look at. He's my 28th ranked, first baseman. So you just got to keep an eye out on him. But with that being said, guys, thank you for tuning in. Check out Dom's episode some point this weekend. But with that being said, guys, have a good night.